The Romans did not have a numeral for what 0 really was, because they really couldn't work out what nothing would look like. But by even discussing what nothing would look like, therefore makes it something. And this is the basis of practically anything that is negative space. It's filling something with nothing, even if that nothing is something. In the art world, it's commonly used to show isolation or even loneliness. This can be seen by using one solid colour or even having a wide open space between the subject matter and whatever that space may be. This is also used to create a sense of tension and distance between a character and their environments. This is a visual technique that you've seen in practically every single film, but today I want to talk about how it can be used organically in an environment where a director may not always have control of the visuals, but most importantly how it's used in horror to build tension and even relief. I would like to welcome you to today's video where we're looking into the use of negative space in horror. Whether you're talking about a perfectly fixed camera angle and lighting to lead the player to their destination or doom, or even having the camera sit on the character's shoulders with zero HUD to create tension in the environment, or even finding moments for the player to be alone, think about what may be ahead of them, maybe what they've gone through, and maybe what they're getting out of this situation. Negative space is mostly used in a lot of box art covers when it comes to Doom to Call of Duty to Resident Evil 4 to the Blair Witch. It's an effect that is often eye-catching but can be an overused trope by today's standards. But when it's done correctly, it can also be thought-provoking and interesting to a consumer. But horror gaming can adopt the negative space in a term that's called negative possibility space. It's where a developer has left a void or an aura of anticipation that the player has to fill with their minds, but most importantly has to create a sense of satisfaction, whether this be a reward or some sort of punishment and playoff. It's when you're given attention to something that the player has gone out of their way to do, even if it's something that necessarily isn't always a reward. I want to give you 3 prime examples though how this can be done differently within horror games. The first one will be anticipation. Resident Evil 1 is probably one of the most important games when it comes to survival horror and horror gaming as a whole, and many people will often remember maybe one of the best jump scares in gaming history. It's when the dogs first jump through the window and it puts you in a moment of terror and makes you completely unaware of what's happening. And because this is such a key moment, it's no doubt that it was going to return within the remake. But of course people was expecting it to come this time, so there's no way that it would have been anywhere as important or even as impactful as it once was. But no, they actually made it worse. They gave the audience nothing. Using the player's anticipation against them creates a feeling that they will appreciate. You played homage to something that they expect, give them a payoff with a sense of relief which they can reserve their ammo for later, but most importantly you give them something that they can't expect to change. They know something has to come and they know something could be different, but now they have no idea when it will appear, and this really does create a sense of the unknowing and takes them out of that comfort zone that they thought they were so confidently in. The next one will have to be expectance, and this is when you're expecting something to happen once you've become so familiar with its ideas. As you walk through the halls of PT, it gives you nothing for a while, a few bumps and strange sounds, but the intensity feels bit by bit. You get very subtle hints of what this person or thing may look like, and even sounds of breathing and crying babies from behind slamming doors leaves the player to understand its flow and gain of its horror. And very early on you quite confidently walk through these halls expecting more slight jump scares to come in hand, but immediately as you walk around the corner you hear her crying and then it pays off with her standing right there in front of you. This moment is probably one of the most iconic moments out of this whole entire demo. It plays on expectations to a perfect degree. In your mind you've already worked out the order that these scares are going to come in and you don't expect anything to take as big as a leap as this, but when you're face to face with Lisa then it suddenly hits you. The fear of the unknowing. It's that fear that you can't anticipate anything. In most demos or even most horror games they show you the biggest fear last. They give you that expectation that you know it's going to build up to one big jump scare or a big reveal, but the fact they give it to you so quickly tells you that all the rules here are broken. There's nothing you can expect, and this is why it makes one of the most iconic games of all time. The last one has to be filling the void, and this has to probably be the most common use of negative space in any media when it comes to gaming and when it comes to film. It's filling that background with something unknown or even filling it with a slight scare. It's seen in every single paranormal film out there. It's to use the background and the darkness that invites the audience to see something that our heroes don't. Songs of Horror fantastically uses this with its fixed camera angles to build tensions by randomly putting enemies that lurk within the dark. It has one of my favourite subtle scares from last year when you look outside this window. You may see it, you may not, but once you notice it, it puts you on edge. It's using the characters' fears and the darkness that surrounds them, that placing these subtle spooks in the dark, which can also leave the audience's eyes darting to every single backdrop and dark corner in hope to see something spooky that the player doesn't see or not everyone can see. But this can also track all the way back to anticipation, and it's how filling that nothing with something even though there is nothing there. It's a fantastic use of negative space, and it's something that you'll never ever not get bored of seeing, especially when done well in horror games or even horror movies. It's most commonly used to fill us with emotions and even a sense of dread within our environments. From Playdead's incredible Limbo and Inside, which uses silhouettes and lighting to separate the character and its worlds and also create a sense of distance and even unknowing within the environments. It's creating this sense of distance between the character and its worlds, which is probably one of the most important rules when talking about the use of negative space. So many great films and games use this technique to make you feel disconnected, making you feel like you don't understand the situation or even conveying the isolation of the character itself. Silent Hill often uses this fantastically to make the town feel empty, almost like something is stalking you and watching you from within that fog. It's Resident Evil 5's HUD-less intro which makes Chris feel so out of place within the streets of Africa, why there are people walking around stalking you and watching your every move. Gaming in the last 15 years has really adopted the use of the over-shoulder camera, seen first in Resident Evil 4, but also now most popular because of Dead Space and games like the Arkham series. This makes the world feel so unknown and distant from us. And using this technique, which is most often used in horror movies, means that it leaves the space and the screen to be filled with whatever the developer wants. The Ishimura itself feels so alive and unknown to people because how this game uses its negative space and its negative possibility space. Making a pitch black room and hearing sounds all around you puts Isaac and the player of both immediate sense of combat, imagining all the possibilities of ways you could be attacked and ways you can be scared and even ways you can be killed. But the genius of this part is that nothing happens. It's the player's pure anticipation and the possibilities of the environment, which visually itself is perfect, leaves you in a moment of terror, but also creates so much tension within that space. There's never a moment in Dead Space where the camera itself doesn't make Isaac feel like the centre stage. The rust and blood covered walls mixed with the colourful rig always puts Isaac right in view. There's never a moment where you're never going to see this glowy rig on his back, and you're always going to have an understanding of your health, your status and how your character's doing overall. It's how the lighting and how he's placed within this camera which really makes Isaac come alive as a person. You feel every single emotion that he feels, wherever you need to keep pushing forward, whenever you want to walk around in space and it's completely silent, or even when you're left in the dark. You're filled with Isaac's pure emotions because your emotions are also his. You feel alone, you feel isolated, and you feel like death could be around every corner. Very much how Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa uses dark tones and shadows of her veil to put full focus around her face, which attracts the viewer's eyes of the art. And this is the same way which we see in many video games. Whether you're talking about the Temple of Time structure standing on top of the mountainside in Breath of the Wild, or even if you're talking about the neo-blue glow of the gas station from Silent Hill Downpour, it brings you a step closer to civilization, but it also opens an incredible space that the player is left to explore and given an instinctive direction to go. But to explore these places not physically but with our eyes and mentally is something that really reflects on loneliness and isolation. It's being thrown back into STEM within Evil Within 2 with nothing but anticipation of what could happen and what this machine could hold. It's showing obscure imagery, and being left alone within this machine for the first few seconds really makes you calculate and think about what could be ahead of you. The strange imagery here and the loneliness is building the perfect tension for when this game really does get crazy. But sometimes it's important to give the player something, even if that something is nothing. Having high stress horror games like Dead Space or Resident Evil, it's always good to have moments of solitude to build tension and also create a feeling of safety. Safe rooms are a fantastic use of negative possibility space. By having nothing happen in these moments lets your mind take in all the possibilities of what could happen, what could be lurking behind that door or even at the end of that boat ride, or even what happens when the lights do come back on. It's filling the world with dread, fear, frustration and most importantly nothing that makes tension in horror so special sometimes. But it's when you get in situations where nothing happens that scares us more when something happens, is why I love horror so much, and I love how it can play with all the possibilities. I also want to talk about jump scares, but I'll do that in a completely different video. I hope you enjoyed me talking about negative space, and if you have anything to contribute to this video, I'd really appreciate it if you put it down in the comments down below. I also would like to know, what is your favourite subtle type of scare in a horror game or even in a movie? What is your favourite horror game or a horror movie of all time? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, why not share it around, and why not subscribe for more videos like this every week, and I'll be talking about jump scares very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.